Hello, everyone. Welcome to Plotting, How to Train Your Vibes. You know that saying, no plot, all vibes? Well, that's cool when you're starting out, gathering ideas and doing research. But what happens when it's time to turn those vibes into a book? How do you get started? And the best way to do that is to structure your ideas into a plot. That's what I'm going to teach you here. So I always start all my classes with a who am I and why should you listen to me? I am a YA author, currently with 2 published books. I am one of Right Hive's editors and residents, creator of the Inkwell Council, which is unfortunately now defunct, but it was a editing service that ran a monthly lottery for free 3-chapter edits. I am a freelance editor who has worked with clients for nearly a decade and worked with programs like Writer in Motion, Query Connection, the Young Inkling Society. That's just a selection of them. I've been doing a lot of freelance work in that time. So that's just like the tip of the iceberg of what I've been doing for the last few years. So I've acquired some knowledge, so that's why I guess you should listen to me. So to introduce, what are we going to learn? We're going to talk all about plot structure. And if you're a plotter or a pantser, don't worry, this lesson is still for you. If you're a plantser, that's what I am. I'm a plantser, I'm somewhere in the middle. If you're a pantser, your first draft should always be you telling yourself the story. Once it's out, then you can go back, you can make changes, make sure you hit all the beats that I mentioned here. And if you're a plotter by nature, this is how you can start. You can start by figuring out which of these beats you're going to hit and when, and how you're going to work your general idea into these 3 acts that I'm going to talk to you about that have several plot points in them. Either way, knowing the structure will help you tighten your story. So if you see that your scenes don't do any of these functions and don't serve in the progression of the story, then you know that's something that can go. So we're going to think of our story as a 3-act play. Each part will be broken down into subsections, and I'll walk you through all of them. Act 1 is all major lead up. So it's basically getting us into the meat of our story. Act 2 is the meat of the story. So if we're talking a sandwich or a hamburger, let's say a hamburger, then we have the bun, the top bun, and then you've got the meat, the lettuce and tomatoes, all of that stuff that's in the middle. That is your second act. And because that can have a big mix of things in it, that can get soggy sometimes. So you want to make sure that you keep your burger well cooked, which we will talk about how to do that. Act 3 is when everything comes to a head, or as I like to call this, when the shit hits the fan. I apologize for my my language. It'll come up again too in Act 3. So sorry in advance. So the first act, which your top burger bun, is the first 25% of your story, and the bottom burger bun, which is your final act, is another 25%. The second act is the meat of the burger, and that is a big 50% of your story. Which is why, again, I say you have to be very careful to make sure that that doesn't slow down your entire story. So first, we'll talk about Act 1, the setup. So you want to start with a hook. And to put it shortly, as I have in the bullet points on the slides, how do we catch the attention of the reader? So the narrative hook can be anything from the first sentence to the first few paragraphs of a story. I don't really call the first sentence the hook. I call it bait. This is what makes our fishy reader bite. The hook to me is the next few paragraphs, which pull the reader along. The plot is the boat. The book is the path home. And I have this metaphor, could go on forever, and I'm beating it all the way into the ground. So we're going to stop there. So you can start in a lot of ways. You can start in media res, which means in the middle of a situation. This creates a bit of mystery that your readers have to catch up with. A good example of this is V.E. Schwab's the Savage Song. It's an awesome hook. The main character starts her story by pouring gasoline in a church. And immediately you're like, why is she doing this? What kind of character would do this? She says that she needs to do this in order to go home. And so you're already tied up with this character, because on the one hand, you might not agree with what she's doing, but there is a moment of, wait, is this the person we're supposed to be following? Wait, why is she doing this? Wait, what does she gain from this? Why is this something that she can gain from? And suddenly you're in the story. You've been pulled along on the hook. You have been baited. You're in. You can also start with a surprising statement. So one of my favorite books from one of my favorite authors, The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. The first line is, the first thing you find out when your dog learns to talk is that dogs don't got nothing much to say. And immediately we know a lot about the character. We hear the character's voice. We know that their dog has somehow learned how to talk. We know that he's probably not exactly terribly educated for the don't got nothing much to say. And we know that our main character is totally done with this dog talking, like he's over it. So this is normal to him. And we're in a weird place because dogs talk. And while that isn't really getting into what the story is about, it does get us into the main character and his dog, who are major characters in the story, are major, they drive the story forward. And it's, you've got the mystery, you've got a setting hint, you've got the character, and something's weird, and it makes you go, okay, what is this world? Why do animals talk? What is happening? And that's what you want. You want to start with something that will draw the reader in. So definitely this should not be the inciting incident. As you want to take a minute to make your readers care about your characters before you throw them into the big conflict of your story. Make us love, or at least want to follow. You don't always have to like them. Your MC, your main character in the beginning, and give us an opening scene with some sort of conflict and suspense. Just not the moment of conflict and suspense. So start the reader in the middle, or rather the character, start the character I can't speak, I'm sorry. Start the character in the middle of something that shows us who they are. Helps us figure out something that, like, out how they react to pressure. Because you want to see, like, okay, this character is going to be this way, and this is how this story is going to affect them. I just finished working on an edit for a book where the story has it has something to do with this, but very tangentially related to this character who is a delivery person, a messenger. And he's late for his drop off, and seeing the way he reacts to that and what he thinks of himself if he's late and how it affects his own self-image gives us a really strong idea of who he is, how he is going to react to any of the future conflicts that come along, what it means for his character to fail. And even though, yes, the fact that he's a delivery man does play into the course of the story, but that package is kind of unimportant. It doesn't really matter. The point is that he is this person, and this is how it affects him when he's late. And it's such a good start for a story, or for that character rather. So I felt immediately drawn in to what was going on, and he did a lot of world building as the person was, racing to get his package dropped off, and you could see the world by the end of the scene, and it very good start to a story without jumping right into the inciting incident. So I've told the story in a few places. If you listen to the Word Nerd Cafe, I'm sorry, because some of this content is, especially in the setup, since we've been doing the first few pages, is just, stuff we have talked about there. So some of the stories are the same. But when I wrote my first released novel, The Order of the Key, I was querying, and I jumped into a battle with a monster. That was how I started the story. The monster that ends up leading the main character to figure out who she is and what's going on. That was our opening. So I started with the inciting incident. And I thought, great, start with action. Let's get people into it. I was querying, and I got what I still consider to be the greatest agent feedback ever. And what they said was, I feel like I'm watching a really good anime, but I've started from like the second or third episode and I have no idea what's going on or why. And I realized, I was like, yeah, okay, you wanted to start with action, but you put it so close to the action that no one cares about the character yet to care what problem they've gotten into. No one really understands why this is happening or who it's happening to or what's going on. So I knew that I had to do edits, and I knew that I had to add more to the beginning to give people an idea of who the character was. So that's, my personal experience with, oops, I didn't start the story right. So the inciting incident, which I keep mentioning and probably should have defined first, but hey, what gets your main character to go on their journey? Why are they there? What moment is the turning point where they go, okay, I have to make an action. I have to start my story. Because they're existing beforehand, and we should see some of that existence. We should have a good idea of who they are without any of the drama of what's going to happen in the course of the story. But when you start them on that journey, it has to be a moment. Like, you have to see the moment that, okay, I'm about to change everything. I was working on a story about two homeless kids, and the story starts with the second kid, the other kid, not the main character, coming to where they've been hiding, and he's discovered something about their government, and he's very disappointed, and he's suddenly disillusioned. Like, he was always the one with hope, and he's like, no, we're not going to get out of this. This is never going to change, etc. And then he, the next day he disappears, and the main character starts looking for him because they were sort of like teammates. They were helping each other out, and discovers that he may or may not have been kidnapped by the group, a resistance group that is trying to fight against the government, or he joined up. But either way, they know that he's been poking around and asking questions, and now he is going to be he is gone, and that's all she knows. So that moment where she realizes that her friend didn't just like leave because he went to go get food, or leave because he's trying to get a job, or leave because he was just pissed off at the world. He left because he was talking a lot of crap and poking at a mystery, and someone didn't like it. And so that is the inciting incident. That's the moment where she goes, well, I have to find him, and I have to find out what happened to him. And that's an example of the moment that she embarks on her journey. Another example, think about Batman. God knows I'm always thinking about Batman. I'm a huge geek, and my favorite thing is Batman and the Bat family and all the Robins. but and Batgirl. If the inciting incident of Bruce Wayne's life as Batman is the moment his parents are killed, the opening of the story, the hook, is the moment where Bruce's fear causes him to ask his parents to leave the theater. He is upset, and we see that how he is when he's in a difficult situation, at least who he is at that moment. And then we watch him change when that inciting incident happens. At that moment, he decides, okay, this can never happen again. And sort of starts the seeds towards becoming Batman. We're not there yet, but that is another example of an inciting incident. The key event, at first, the main character is going to try to argue their way out of doing what they're called to do. So if they are at some point supposed to, like, think of the hero's journey. If they are supposed to be a superhero, there will be that moment of, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this, or this is risky, or maybe I shouldn't be, maybe I'm not the person for this. They'll try to find another way to make things happen that doesn't involve them being a superhero. To use the Order of the Key, again, one of my books, but as another example, this is the moment where Jacqueline goes, this is dangerous, and this being a hero is going to get my sister killed potentially. And she starts to, or could get all of us killed. And she tries to get out of it, or tries to think a way around how she can continue without taking that step. But despite that, the key event is that moment where something pulls them in deeper. They know that they want to see if there's a way that they can not do this and still survive. But they want to find out, they want to try to find a way out of it, but in trying to find a way to do things differently and not go on that journey that they're expected to go on, they end up finding something that drags them in deeper. And that is the key event. Something happens, and now the character knows that they have to go forward and do what must be done. So now we're the first major plot point. Something major has shifted, and now your character can no longer pull themselves free from the story. This should happen about a quarter of the way into the book, and things have to shift. A good example is from Toy Story. Buzz arrives, and now Woody has to deal with how much everyone loves him. And this is the first big paradigm shift. It's the point of no return. The character can no longer pull themselves free from the story. And because you want your characters to have agency in the story, this is usually stronger if it is in some way their decision. You want them to have the chance to take another path, but decide on the one that the plot dictates for reasons. In that story I was telling you about, the Runaways, she's continues to investigate the disappearance of her friend. She can leave it alone, but she doesn't leave it alone. She chooses to confront the alleged kidnappers and ends up getting taken herself. Now she cannot get out of the story. This moment is the moment where things change for good, and she now has to continue on her path. That leads us to the middle, which is Act 2. We start with the fallout, and this is, you're going to see this happens in every act now. What happened with the major plot point, we now need to see that affect our characters. And I said, how will the reader in this PowerPoint, but what I meant was the character. How does the character deal with what happened at the close of Act 1? Because this was a major moment, and now we have to see how the characters involved shift to accommodate this big change. Then we have the lead up, which in the hero's journey is called Tests, Enemies, and Allies. And this is kind of a big chunk. It takes us from about a quarter of the way through the book to about halfway, like a little more than a quarter of the way through the book to about halfway through the book. And it is the lead up. It is the rising tension, and we get to know our main character more. We get to know the surrounding characters that they're encountering. Think Buffy the Vampire Slayer when she first meets her Scooby Gang, her Willow, Xander, Giles, those people. I don't know if anyone else has watched this that is here, but if they have, that's what I mean. Like, you're talking about this moment where they're meeting the characters, they're finding out about the villain, they are making friends, they are encountering the beginnings of their problems, whatever those problems might be. And as we continue, and always continuing rising tension with some falling tension to relieve it, because that is another important fact. You're always building. Even when you relieve a little with a scene in between that calms things, you then start building another rung of tension. But all of this gives us time to get to know the characters and the world better. This is where I think usually the bulk of the world building should be done, so that we have a good idea of like what exactly we're dealing with and all of the situations that impact what's happening. And when I say world building, I don't just mean like, oh, this is we're writing an epic fantasy and we need to know all about the, government of Narnia or whatever. What I'm talking about is your character's world, which I know a lot of people just use world building flatly to mean like science fiction or fantasy, and that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is building the world your character lives in, the people, the job, and the people they work with, the situations that they're a part of. In Never Say Never, which is another book of mine, and I'm sorry, I totally wish I could think of better examples right now, but I'm not coming up with one. It's when we get to see Scooby-Doo, her ice cream shop, and the people she works with there, and we get the dates that she starts to go on because Aphrodite is setting her up on them. All of these little moments that are part of the story at large are there to build up the relationships between the characters and build us to the point that the larger things happen. The midpoint, the turning point of the story. This is 50% in now. It's a major event. It must take place, and preferably, I can't speak, preferably your main character should fail. So yeah, the reason why they should fail is they need to take a major risk in this midpoint. And what you want to do is you want them to fail just enough to survive, but for there to be some collateral damage. And I don't mean obviously romances, or like some romances, it depends on what genre of romance you're talking about, but like, quiet books are not going to have this moment of, life or death. But failure isn't just that. Failure is, getting a bad mark on a test. Failure is, in the character's mind, whatever, you get a bad mark on a test, you study, you do better next time. But my point is trying to be a parent at the same time as I teach. If whatever the character wants, which is a very important character motivation. I think Hannah's the one that's teaching all about character arcs. Whatever your character wants, your character should fail to get, and they should get close to getting it, or should take a risk that might lead them to it, but they fail, at least in a minor way, enough that they still, that you're not wrapping up the story. This is not the end. This is not when they figure it all out. They have to take a risk, and they have to fall flat on their face a little bit, and then that helps them learn. So that's the midpoint, and that is a huge turning point. That part needs to be the moment that shifts things to being even more dramatic, even more in peril. Now we realize the true stakes. Even though we had an idea of the stakes, what is risked here if the character completely fails, and what will that mean? Which leads us to the moment of doubt. which is your character, they don't think they can do it anymore. They took this risk. They thought they were getting there. It got ripped out of their hands. And now they don't think they can do it. And maybe as the writer, you don't know either. You're like, okay, I wrote myself to a place where it seems like nothing I do can fix this. But they have to try to figure out, and you have to try to figure out a way that they can get restarted on their journey. So they're going to have a moment where they're going to be like, I can't do it, I give up, or they're going to say, fine, I'll do whatever whoever wants. And like, you want to have that moment of, maybe I'm not meant to be the person who fixes this, or, fine, I'm not going to pay attention to this government that is trying to, control my life. Maybe it's just meant to be that way, or something like that. And then that doubt and that self exploration should bring about the third plot point, which is, again, where the shit hits the fan. Meaning the character hits their lowest point, and that should launch us into Act 3. Act 3 it starts again with the fallout. And how will the main character deal with what happened at the close of Act 2? Something big happened. They now need to figure out how to fix this, and how to get to the thing that they want, their ending of the story. So Act 3, at the end of Act 2, probably should have been another failure. It should have been something else, another hit to their pride, another hit to what they were going to do, or just they got themselves into deeper trouble somehow. And I know I'm mean to my characters, but you should be too. You have to be mean to your characters. I know that this is something that I get teased about a lot by some of the other Right Hive members, that I'm really mean to my characters, but you have to create conflict, and there's no story if everything's good all the time. If everybody's happy, then that's great. Sure, good people should have good things and all, but it's kind of not real life, which sounds mean, but it's true. Crap happens. And also, it's not a compelling story. No one really wants to hear about, and then the two people who loved each other very much and were always very happy went to the store and they bought sugar, and then they came home and they baked a cake, and that cake turned out really, really good, and they ended up eating that cake and loved it in the end. Like, who cares? Why? Like, why do I need to know? We want our characters to go through things, even if they're not major things. We want our characters to be challenged, or else it doesn't matter. So you should be going through your story, through this whole bit of Act 1, Act 2, all the stuff we're talking about, go through it. And as you're building tension, you should always be asking, what can happen that would be worse? How can I make this harder? And, bring them to, like, how much can you figure out? Like, how bad can you make it worse? And then you have to figure out how to get out of it. And when you figure out how they can get out of it, that is the moment that basically brings us that moment is started by the climax. The climax isn't what people think of. Totally PG, Justine. The climax is when the roller coaster starts going up. And I know that's not how people think of it. People think of it as when the roller coaster hits the top and comes back down. But no, that's the climactic point. The climax is the buildup of tension at the end of the story. The moment where you realize, the moment where you get to that part of the book that you literally can't put down, and you end up finishing the whole book in one night. And I'm not saying those people who could actually finish a book in one night. I'm talking about the ones that are like, oh, I'm getting towards the end, but I don't have time to finish it. Oh, wait, suddenly it's 2 a.m. and I've finished the book. That's the moment you really start to build towards the end, the moment where you can see this is about to blow up and we're just moving the pieces in place for that explosion. That is the climax. The climactic point is when everything comes to a head, leading to the closing of our main conflict. We've gone up, 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 up. We've hit the top. And now the protagonist and the antagonist have finally faced off. We end in an explosive, not necessarily literally finale. And that moment is our climactic point. The stuff has happened. The big moment has happened. And the rest is the resolution. This is time to wrap up all those threads in a satisfying way. Now, at this point, with everything that has happened in the climax, things should, in the climax and up to the climactic point, you should be close to the end. You now have started wrapping things up. We see what's going to happen to the protagonist. We see what's going to happen to the antagonist. We start seeing, the other characters have started to, sort of figure themselves out and what they're going to do. The resolution is when all those get wrapped in a satisfying manner, and you get an idea of how life will continue from now. Things have changed. The climactic point has shifted everything. What happens? Where do we go from here? And that's what gives the readers closure. So you've gotten through that whole super tense moment, and this is the down, and then they were okay. Or if it's a negative arc, and then, if it's a negative character arc, which means that things just, the character just gets worse by the end, then the reader gets to see what the new norm is and how did they get away with that. And, oh, so this is just how they're going to be now. And that can be kind of devastating, but it still feels very, natural, and because of the story that you've built. So I've gone through these really quickly, and I feel like even with what probably was about 40 minutes at this point, or maybe 30 minutes of storytelling or explaining, that I've gone really fast, and maybe you guys have questions, and that'll be great. What I'll start with is saying that I personally never think of these things when I am writing a story, even though I am a plotter. And I do like the big ones, like I'll think of the start, and then I'll think of the midpoint and the end usually. And then I will just kind of work, and then what comes out, then I streamline afterwards. So don't feel like you have to get this right away. Or your plot is like defined by these moments, and if you don't have them all on the outset, that you're not writing a book or something like that. Like this stuff is guidelines. It's how you do need these things, but it's not always how your story will come out at first. Then you can adjust. Edits are a powerful tool in your toolbox. Going back and revising and changing bits, that is where you write. They say that writing is actually rewriting, and I truly believe that. I think that you really do tell the story very loosely at first, and then when you tighten it in the edits, this is when you go, okay, I move from one point to another, one major point to another, and they happen super fast, and there's no downswing, and this story is moving too fast, and it's too tense, and I feel like the reader doesn't get a break. That's when you have to work in quiet moments and have that tension rise and then fall, which something I didn't talk about much in my original notes, but I think I'll note here before we go into Q&A, is that when you have a story, the story's wavelength of tension should be up, down, up, down, up, down, because those midpoint, those high tension points, the main plot point, the beginning, the midpoint, the second plot point, all those things, the third main plot point, the climax, those are your big moments. Those are your tense moments. And yes, there should always be building tension as you work, but they can be quieter. And when you hit those huge points, you need downtime, which is why we always have a fallout after, because When you've hit that moment, now we need time to recover. And that's the moment that not only is the character recovering and trying to figure out what to do next, but the reader is reading and gets to take a breath. They're not just continuing on that, twisty roller coaster. So like if we're talking about the climax as a roller coaster, we'll continue that metaphor. You've got, you're going uphill, downhill, uphill, downhill, uphill, downhill. But what if you rode the roller coaster, you're up, and then you just twist in the air over barrel rolls? Like that would make you kind of sick, right? That's what having like continual risen tension feels like when you're reading. What you have to do, if you're going to do a barrel roll, it has to be quick and then come back down. Because if you're doing all those rolls, you're just going to end up vomiting on the people that are watching you from below. And it's not a good roller coaster ride if you do that. I mean, some people just have sensitive stomachs, but I think you're pretty much guaranteed to feel that way if you're like just rolling across the track. Anyway, I've gotten off topic, but anyway, so that leads us to our Q&A, and I am open for any questions you might have. I'm going to have answers in the chat. This portion is fully text. And I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson. I hope that it helps. And if you, again, if you need any help or you need any guidance, that's what these one-on-ones for the people who are chosen were for. If you're part of the Right Hive community, I am always hanging out in the cafe, the editor's cafe. You can always ask questions about these things if you need it. Which is me trying to tell you, sign up for the Right Hive community, because it's a very good community of writers who help each other. And I'm there and Hannah's there, and we're always there answering questions and things like that. So if you need to talk more about any of these topics or ask questions to your peers about very specifically about your story, this is the way to do it. On that note, I'm going to stop advertising for Right Hive and tell you guys to start asking your questions in the chat. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the chat.